Hey guys, what's up? It's Solo, and today before the video starts, we're going to be talking about the fact that, I do a series on TikTok where I go through and show old armor sets and then show them with new shaders. As you can see, I have the current armor set on, but I do have a lot of the older ones where I can actually show them and put them on in my collection. And yeah, so I took a few days off of doing that, but I'm gonna go back to that, and of course looking at ornaments for crafted weapons. But anyway, let's talk about today's topic, which is champions. Now, champions, if you guys don't know, are what were originally Bungie's response to, hey, can you make the game harder? Now, while this may have worked for a little amount of time, people eventually got fed up with the idea of champions. The reason why is because of the way that champions work. Now, if you guys don't know how champions work, champions have a certain symbol associated with them, and that symbol is what each champion's ability is. So, for example, with my Lament, I always have the, two triangles. And then I have my pulse rifle, which has the square with the two lines through it. And then with my grenade, I have the circle with the, zigzag through it. And basically what each of these means is barrier means that when the target gets low, or I think it's past 1/3 of their health, they'll put up a barrier. If you do not destroy the barrier, they will just immediately regain all of their health. And the only way to do that is to use guns, or in this case, Lament, which have the barrier symbol to destroy his barrier when it goes up. Okay, and then the second symbol, which is one on my pulse rifle, which I believe is unstoppable. Let me check that just to make sure. Yeah, it's unstoppable. Which means basically what it does is unstoppables, if I remember right. The reason why they suck is because they're basically, if you guys remember Destiny 1, some of you might not, there was a guy who was a boss in Prison of Elders, and he was known as one thing, bullet sponge, because it took you about 30 minutes to shoot him. It's basically like that into a champion, and basically what you have to do is you have to aim down, wait for that to proc, and then shoot them with unstoppable to make it so then their health can go down normally instead of tiny amounts. Now the last one, which I have on my grenades all the time, is Overload. Now Overload, their gimmick is that their health constantly is regenning unless you proc your Overload debuff onto them. They're always going to regenerate health before you can kill them. So with these three, you think, oh, that poses a challenge, but there's also the issue of loadout, build crafting, right? Loadout making. The issue with it is that when you put these champions into the game, and A, they're the only types of champions, and B, there's no way to differentiate the loadouts besides the seasonal artifact. There becomes a problem of, in certain seasons, certain weapons are only going to be good for the reason of destroying these shields, but other weapons that people might want to use cannot. For example, there used to be an SMG mod, but now that I don't have it, I can't sit there and do an overload with an SMG because it doesn't have the mod, or the fact that I would have to always have either a pulse rifle or shotgun in my inventory to even go into higher end content is kind of a hindrance for a lot of people who want to actually do this. And just for reference, so there is about, I believe, there's 3 different mods for each, champion. So for example, for Overload, we have bow, and then machine guns, and then finally surge detonations. And then for Unstoppables, we have pulse rifles, and punches, and where's the other one? Oh, here it is, shotgun. And then for barriers, we have at 3 as well, which is scouts, auto rifles, and then snipers. So that means grenade launchers, SMGs, swords, God, what else? Fusions, and even the Void subclass don't have a way to actually counter these champions. So that means you can't use Void unless somebody else on your team or the other two are doing champions. You can't use SMGs, you can't use swords unless it's Lament. You can't use fusions, you can't use grenade launchers unless they have these perks. One moment, I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back. Let's get back on topic. So with the inclusion of champions, you have to ask yourself, A, what is the way we could fix champions? Or B, if we remove champions, how could we rework the current way that endgame activities work? Well, there's a few answers here that you could put in. Number 1, every gun can roll with a corresponding perk. For example, if I do duality and they decide, you know what, like this gun, Unforgiven, you know, with the origin trait, right after the origin trait, instead of a tracker here, the tracker would be over here. There'd be a perk where you can switch the different mod that you have, whether it be Unstoppable, Barrier, or Overload. That way, so for example, if I do like 3 legendaries, I could get all of them without having to have my grenade, you know, used as a mod as well. Now, mind you, that would take them, of course, recoding the entirety of guns to have these mods inside of them, which does take a great deal of effort, but it would solve a lot of people's issues, because then you could just use whatever you wanted and, you know, have a good time doing higher tier content. Now, there is a second solution, which is the removal and reworking of champions, and the reason why a lot of people would probably go for this one is because it means they would probably have to go towards reworking not only champions, but also the feeling of endgame content as a whole with how difficulty scales. Now, I'm on the side of going with this option as well, for the simple fact of I feel like they do need to rework how endgame content is in general. For example, Master Nightfalls need to have their own reward, or not Master Nightfalls, God. Master Raids and Nightfalls need to have their own like pool of rewards that you can get. The reason why I say this is because to do a master version of something to get, you know, like Adept, the only reason why it works for Nightfalls is because a lot of the Nightfall weapons don't come with craftable versions, which is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, because people, you know, will want to craft stuff. But also, with raids, if you're not going to add anything new and just be like, oh, hey, it's a challenge to get the, you know, to get the title, then people are going to be up your butt about the fact that, you know, they just did the entirety of a master raid just for you to be like, oh, hey, by the way, there's not really anything new because the borrowed weapons are worse than the regular crafted weapons. And I can vouch for that. My Doom Machelsis, even if it was an Adept, or if it was Adept, it would still be better crafted because of perk selection. Now, I definitely think they should rework this to be more of a, okay, once you get to the high-end content, there's a specific loot pool that is high-end content, and whether or not they keep Adepts is up to them. But only certain perks are allowed to drop from higher-end content. And what I mean by this is, if you're willing to go through a Grandmaster Nightfall, a Master Raid, and say they add like Master Strikes or, you know, Trials of Osiris going flawless, then you should be able to have a perk that lets you do better in those areas of the game. For example, say I do, I don't know, a Grandmaster Nightfall, right? And I get a specific either gun or mod or perk, right? That basically lets me do damage to all types of champions and stun them. And just let it be like, I don't know, like a Vanguard Disruption or something like that. You know, that would be helpful because that would make me feel like the effort that someone put in for that be justified. Whereas going into a Master Raid, where the only thing you get is the same raid armor and dark versions of the weapons that are worse than the crafted versions, is kind of, not gonna lie, it's kind of bad. And honestly, I feel like, well, I'm not going to tell you to bring back Age of Triumph armor because I feel like that was its own time. We need to move past that. I will say having a master version armor set would definitely also help with this. And I'm not here to be like, oh, well, you know, Bungie's bad for doing this. I'm just giving suggestions that they could do, which is giving people like a master version of, you know, sets, like have it be like more, because like you figure Titans look like War Priest, right, with the new set or the set that's in here. Either give us like ornaments for doing master, or give us just an entirely new set that's like harrowed version of our current set that comes with like specific perks that help in Master Kingsfall or Master Raids in general. You know, that's the thing, is when you're developing something like this, I'm not, mind you, I'm coming from like very minor developer experience. But when you develop something like that, you want it to be rewarding for the people who are doing endgame. And you also want it to benefit the people doing endgame as well. So like, doing Master Kingsfall now doesn't really help. Like, it kind of feels like you're just doing it for the triumph. To get the, yeah, to get the title. And that's about it. While that is cool, and for completionists, you know, that's going to be good for them. Not all the endgame content players want just the title for all their efforts, especially with how many champions you're adding into Master Kingsfall or, of course, Grandmasters. So that being said, I definitely say unique loot pools, you know, that are only helpful for people doing endgame content, you know, and making the guns used in endgame content better. But also, like, you could put, like, I don't know, like ornaments or like actually the cool shaders and stuff like that behind masters, and people will grind that shit forever. Like, I have seen so many people, like, in my lifetime of Destiny, that will literally be like, oh, this shader's only in the highest content possible. Here, let me just go grind it real quick until I get this shader. Like, you give us a good shader for Master Kingsfall or like flawless and stuff like that, you're gonna have a lot of people trying to go after it. But yeah, so, and the biggest like instance of all this is champions, and I feel like, in my own personal opinions, champions needs a major rework in the way of how guns and how players can interact with champions, so then we're not just limited on what actual guns we can bring in, but actually like boosted up by the fact that we're actually messing with one of the game's main mechanics, which is of course crafting, and also build crafting with armor sets. I don't know, but that's my silly personal opinion. Guys, this is a discussion, so I hope you guys leave anything, you know, any suggestions down below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy, hit the like button, comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.